Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you all on behalf of Team Avatar and my avatars to this webinar titled Women Breaking the Glass in Manufacturing Industry. I'm Beena Menon, and I will be your host for this evening. Before we begin, here are a few hygiene checks for a seamless virtual experience. Please close all your other applications on your computer and log out from your organization's VPN to conserve internet bandwidth. Avatar, a pioneer in the field of diversity, equity, and inclusion, had the vision to see more women participate in the workforce. We have expanded our impact across diversity strands to cover people with special needs, disabilities, LGBTQ+. Avatar Group, a Stanford Seed certified company, has built its DEI offerings under 4 EDs, which ensures that every organization can have a clear path towards moving forward, building and sustaining diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces. For its transformational impact in the realms of DEI, Avatar Group was listed in the prestigious Steward Leadership 25 listings by Straits Times and INSEAD at Singapore in 2022. Dr. Soundarya Rajesh, founder president Avatar Group, is one of India's most respected thought leaders on diversity, equity, and inclusion. An award-winning social entrepreneur, she is best known as the pioneer of second career opportunities for women in corporate India. A relentless advocate of the potential of women in the workplace, Dr. Soundarya is the founder of successful social enterprises such as Avatar Career Creators, Flexi Careers India, Brihat Insights Global, and Avatar Human Capital Trust. Her latest brainchild, myavatar.com, is India's first diversity job portal for candidates belonging to the underprivileged talent groups, people with disabilities, people with LGBTQ plus identity, and veterans. As pioneers of DEI in India, Avatar is proud to present its diversity job portal, myavatar.com, and is committed to shine the spotlight on candidates who have the qualification, talent, passion, and drive for career success, not on their differences. In fact, we at Avatar know that it is the differences that makes everyone unique and invaluable. MyAvatar.com was recognized as one of the top 10 promising job portals by Silicon India. This series of webinars from myavatar.com aims to cover and bring to you those value adds and topics that can help you with your career and at your workspace. I, Beena Menon, once again welcome you all on behalf of Team Avatar, India's premier diversity, equity, and inclusion solutions firm, and myavatar.com, India's only diversity hiring portal, to MyAvatar's webinar. Let's celebrate ourselves. The manufacturing industry has evolved, and the skill set required is changing. With advancements in technology and automation, there is now a greater emphasis on skills such as problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity, which is not inherently gender specific. This has opened a new door of opportunities for many women to enter and rise up to the ranks in manufacturing industries and break the glass ceilings. In today's session, let us understand the biases and barriers that derail women from venturing into a career in manufacturing industry, strategies for breaking the glass ceilings, and listen to success stories from who else but the woman who has broken the glass ceiling herself and has achieved leadership positions. A warm welcome to Paramita Sarkar, a chemical engineer by training with post-graduation in business management. She has spent over 3 decades in leading and growing businesses in various parts of chemical value chain. After serving in a variety of functional and general management roles across large global multinationals, she has founded her own company, Neocons, in January 2023. Let us hear it from her. Over to you, Paramita. It's all yours.
Thank you. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we can hear you, Paramita.
Wonderful. So good afternoon, and it's really touches me when I hear Beena saying so much. Really very proud to be here. And I want to thank Avatar for inviting me at this platform. to share and talk about a very interesting, at times a little bit sensitive topic about breaking the glass ceiling. We will discover as you hear me talking whether it exists, is it relevant, and more. Let's hear as we talk. Now, I can't see y'all because that is the webinar format, but trust me, I can feel your presence. And each of you who are here, what really touches me is you have a perspective on this topic, right? Either you faced it, or you think it doesn't exist, or you're curious to understand more, and hence also maybe learn and interact. Whatever be that perspective, that you're here today only shows that you care. You care for a much bigger agenda of equity, diversity, and inclusion. You care that the world gets into having a system which really embraces much more equity and also allows everyone to achieve their full potential. And for that, thank you. Thank you, audience. Let's take it like an interactive discussion through the virtual medium as far as possible. Now, I want to just make a certain disclaimer. My talk, I have no presentations. My talk is not a victim speech. Neither am I telling women, please endure or revolt or ask for entitled favors. No. So the way I'm going to talk in the next few minutes is I will share my personal experiences, both things that I've lived or I have seen at very close quarter within my workspace. Some of these experiences, and through that, I'll come to the next part of my discussion. I just have one request to the host. Is there a way to mute these entries and exits, because it keeps on having that tung sound? If there is a way, I think you can mute that. Yeah.
Guru?
It's very helpful if you can do that, because otherwise constantly there will be that ring coming in. So going back to, there are two parts in which I'm going to try talking to you all. My personal lived and seen experiences, and the second part, so what? So let me start. Now, glass ceiling. I mean, the whole point is I was actually looking up when did it start, just because I had to speak here now. Although we have been using this term and we know, this is actually a term which took birth almost 45 years back. In fact, next month is going to be 45 years, when in US, this was coined to imply barriers that women actually found in their career journey for further development, to upscale, to move up the ladder, the barriers that they saw. Later on, it has actually evolved, and any kind of barrier to a smaller minority is called a glass ceiling. Whether it exists, whether it is relevant, let's talk about it. So I take you back to my journey. In my life, I have mostly made choices which are not so usual, not so stereotypical. So more than 30 years back, when I took up chemical engineering, it was not the most sought for career for a woman. And then I joined a manufacturing companies in a chemical space, a manufacturing company. So what happened is, after my first stint, which was in research and development, I wanted to work in the factory. And I went and asked for a role in the factory, chemical engineer, why not? And then comes the barrier. Just watch. The thought was, how can a woman work in the factory? Because you need to be in shifts and the labor laws won't allow that at that time. Where is a ladies' toilet? There isn't one. And number three, workmen are tough. They use casual, abusive language. So how would a lady be placed in the manufacturing plant's factory. So you see a glass ceiling. Clearly, what I'm trying to say is glass ceiling, which often people think is only at the senior most, at the pyramid of a hierarchy in a organizational journey, is not so. It exists across the layers in different ways and invisible, but many times not so invisible. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about. So you saw that was a glass ceiling, right? What I did about it, I'll talk later. Next, another story in my own life. Years later, after I got married, it was a few years soon after that, I got a great break and very excited. People started congratulating me for cracking that interview. I was very, very happy joining another big company, big name. And just about a few days before joining, one of the senior leaders of the company that I would join called on me and said, let's have a chat. I was very excited. My, mid-20s, went to meet him, expecting he's going to give me some heads up about, what kind of role, the details of it more. And guess what he told me? He said, Paramita, I need a commitment from you that for the next 3 years, you will not go the family way. Glass ceiling, right? Much later in my life, I have seen an extremely talented young lady for certain personal was in the talent pool and was taken off the talent pool because she was not ready at that point in time to take up an assignment which needed her to go out of the country. And then I have seen quite a few times when the most deserving role for a very, very capable woman was not even discussed. She was possibly never even taken through a formal process because through the interview process, I'm sure she would have cracked it because of whatever biases that may be there. So these are a mix of experiences that I've myself seen or gone through. And that brings me to the second part of my topic. How do we deal with it? And here, friends, I'm going to pause for a second or maybe a minute and ask you all to get onto the chat box to say if any of these stories happened in your own life in some color, or if you're a man, if you've seen someone else, what would you do? Maybe in 2 to 3 words. Don't write paragraphs, sentences. Just take up. We need to keep it interacting. One assurance is your identity is anonymous. So your voice and your thinking is important. Your clock starts. I would really request you to say, what would you have done? You've heard 3, 4 kinds of situations. Can I have some entries on the chat box, please? Yes. Nice. Wonderful. So I think very valuable points. Some people say you shouldn't have taken up that job. Somebody says you should revolt and talk about it. And somebody says, okay, you should put it up on a social media. Interesting inputs. Guys, I will share what I did in my life. And from that, if there is any wisdom that can come to any of you. So I see this as 2 parts of a role. The individual has a role and organizations. And when I talk of individuals, the biggest point is, what is it that, it's very interesting. I don't want to be sounding like preaching or prescriptive, because when these incidents happen, to whom it happens, one has to deal with that challenge. It's very easy to step away and give some advice, which can sound like preaching. So I will reflect back as what did I do? So when I go back to that first story that I told you about in the factory, when I was told this, and hence we can't take a woman? My suggestion is speak up. And it's not about revolting, not about fighting. Speak up in a solution providing way, because I remember that many years back, I had still said, why don't you put me in the general shift? Don't put me in night shifts. Let me try out. Give me 3 to 4 months time. Let's see how the workmen on the shop floor react. And ladies' toilet, don't worry. I will go to the administrative building. Leave it on me. So you speak up. You don't just tolerate, endure, give up your aspirations and move on. And that actually really helped me. The next thing which is connected to speaking up is pushing for it. Keep pushing. And not with only one person, but with multiple decision makers, so that not that they think you're nagging, but they know that what you feel and your aspiration, you're strong and clear about it. And you really, really want to do it. The third part, which is something which has really, really paid me off a lot in life, is to build on networks. And networks not necessarily within the organization, because that you will anyway, anytime build, but networks with people outside. And this here, I'll actually take a little bit more to tell you. In general, when we are in the midst of running a business, doing a lot of routine work, we do this very, very bad. We are very good at cultivating our network and relationships with people with whom we have a transaction alive. Current colleagues, current leaders, current customers, current vendors, current coach, current mentor. What about when they are not within the organizational framework? They are the ones with whom you really, really need to keep building on. I have personally gained tremendously. Today that I have been able to put up my entrepreneurial venture is because of multiple support, help, guidance that's come from tons and tons of these networks that I have built and cultivated over time. And you really don't know who when helps you in breaking and smashing which glass ceiling. The fourth point, and very, very important, you have to be flexible and be ready for the trade-offs. You cannot harbor a certain aspiration and then not be ready for what it means to deliver that. If I have to be in a role which calls for staying late at work or moving to another location, then can I actually plan the trade-off? And that brings me to the next topic. Build your support system. And this is very important both at home front and at work front. At home front, whether it's your partner, your husband, your family, call it out. It's just not about calling out with vulnerability, but set it up. Whether you need a 24/7 nanny or whether you need to do something else, and you have to be flexible. That time you can't say, well, my children should not grow up with outsiders. You will have to understand, because I have seen how my girls have been so very, independent oriented, have a thought, and they have grown up in the way that I put support systems at home to be able to deliver my traveling work and extremely demanding roles that I have done. So I think it's important that you put the support system at home, call it out, plan it, who takes on at which point in time, sometimes you, sometimes your partner, or any other system. Equally important to have support system around the work front. Get hold of a coach, get hold of a mentor, and please don't wait for someone else to set it up. Because when you ask someone else to set it up, if it doesn't happen, you just miss out on that, right? So I think it's extremely important to build that support system. And then comes the very, very important part, that is about upskilling. Upskilling is gender agnostic. Upskilling is industry agnostic. You will have to go on upskilling yourself, because what you know today may become irrelevant tomorrow. So to stay ahead of the curve, to stay relevant for tomorrow, to stay future fit, upskilling is must. If you are the best alternative, maybe some glass ceilings might smash. I'm not promising it will, but you are then the best one. You then have a reason to speak up and also address a situation which is not right. But most and most important, don't give up your aspirations, your ambition, and wriggle back into your comfort zone and say, well, and get philosophical. Maybe this has happened because for something bigger that's waiting, or whatever happens, happens for the best. No, do not compromise on your aspirations, because at the end of the day, somewhere it's going to bite you. And you are also not helping others because you're not helping some other glass ceiling to be broken. So all of these 6, 7 things that I have realized and felt I am saying is the individual's role on how we address glass ceiling. And that takes me to the very, very important part, is an organization's role in breaking glass ceilings and barriers. And I think I have seen multiple and worked also in multiple organizations where very successful mandates have been there to break glass ceilings. I'll mention a few. You need to, and there are great examples outside as well. You need to have a deliberate policy to ensure that there is more participation of women. Is there a gender parity at every job role, or are we only looking at some? Are we only going by the count? Do you have a conscious balance slate? If in the society, men and women are 50-50, if in your academic world, they are there, why they're not here? And the question to ask ourselves as at times recruiting managers, are we patient enough to go and find that woman who possibly didn't come through the first search of the consultants? Many times I've actually found tremendous capable people out there, but you really need to nudge, wait, and allow. So organizations really need to have and practice balanced slate. The next very, very important thing is flexi working, of course. Now, COVID has taught us that geography, where you're based, is practically history today. It's pretty much irrelevant. Many times, flexi working is not understood by people. And of course, there can be very many connotations to it, with many roles which can be delivered by working from anywhere. And mobility, let me tell you, is not a woman's problem. There are many men who are not mobile. So let's not call it out that, oh, women, she will not be mobile. It all, because we are a smaller group, it actually becomes more conspicuous. But can we then, as leaders on the other side, really look at it that which part of the job is actually demanding being in the location, and then which part is not, instead of using that as a reason for not giving someone some opportunity out there? So organizations have to address this whole thing of which roles really can be delivered from anywhere. And the next very important thing is cultural shifts need to come. It's not about senior leaders becoming mentors and coach. They need to become sponsors. Can they really ensure that this young talent that I have signed up for is actually taken through various stages and, like a catwalk, taken through different levels of decision-making management and built and then developed, like the way a sponsor works in any other business or otherwise? That's the whole thing. In fact, I know of companies where there is a formal program of he for she, where a senior leader actually is a sponsor to a young talent, a woman talent. So these are cultural shifts that are required. It's not about just doing something as a tick. And then you will find that, this whole idea of glass ceiling, 30 years back when I started my journey and I told you the stories, it was behavioral. Today, trust me, men are not purposely even creating a glass ceiling. Why would they? They are someone's father, they are someone's brother. They also want to see women successful. But many times these are blind spots. They are not in touch when it is getting created by their mindsets, by their behaviors. So it's not the lack of intent. It is about processes and systems not being there in place to ensure it is not happening. And it's extremely important that I call this out with reference to the manufacturing industry, because that's where the focus was. My 31 years has been always in manufacturing industry. And in various parts of the chemical value chain, Veena already explained. Now, what happens is typically, of course, you see lesser women here. It also, changes by the way you're in the various parts of the value chain within the chemical space. So as you move towards the consumer, you see better diversity. But as you have more and more cracks, refinery, and the bulk chemicals or large chemical plants, you see lesser of them. Having said so, what's extremely, extremely important is to get that critical mass. Because if we don't have the critical mass, glass ceilings will not get smashed. Just for that one woman in the factory, one may not build a toilet or change the whole policy. So you really need to get in that critical mass, because if you don't, that 2-3 people who are there will sometime give up or change their career path, and it's going to become a fulfilling prophecy. Oh, women give up because there is glass ceiling, and women give up because they have not been able to smash the glass ceiling because their numbers were not good enough. So I think it brings back that unless there is a pipeline of talent, there is a critical mass, there is going to be all these situations where we will fall into this whole do loop. And that takes me back as to what organizations really need to do. Manufacturing or non-manufacturing, doesn't matter, but more relevant for manufacturing, because that's not usually where women just land up to have their career. Even within manufacturing space, you will find non-stereotypical roles. On the factory shop, are there women? No. Are there women in very senior leadership roles across with so much numbers? No. So you really need to, and I have personally seen when they are there, the texture of the shop floor or the texture of the business does change. The conversation in a room changes color. So glass ceiling connected to and gender ratios, connected to how you set examples, how you allow in an organization mentors and sponsors. Now no more mentors but sponsors. All of this gets truly connected in breaking the glass ceiling, breaking the barriers. So if I have to sum up what I have said, it is that yes, glass ceilings or barriers exist. Let's talk about it. Let's not run away from it. But in trying to talk about it, there is an important role that the individual plays and a role on the organizations if they really believe it and not doing it as a tick. And with all of this, I just loved reading this whole line that comes from Creativity Inc., which says, a lot of us think that we need to be in the driver's seat. And the driving the train is very important. That is how you shape organizations, shape an agenda. But actually, driving the train does not determine the success of the course. It is about laying the tracks. So we really need to lay the tracks to not only ourselves be examples, but help other women to build around this, break and smash glass ceilings. It's so interesting that we call it glass. That means there is a hope that it can be smashed. And I always believe in this one line which says, if it is to be, it's up to me and you. That's it. Thank you.
I think we can open up the session for some questions. If somebody has audience, I would request you all to put in your question in the chat box from where we will pick it up. Okay, Paramita, there's something that's come up is, what does that inspired you to become an entrepreneur? And what are the glass ceilings you had to break to reach where you are now?
Interesting. So I think I will start with the glass ceiling. Some of it I have already shared. But I think the biggest call for becoming an entrepreneur was for quite a few years. I have been thinking that I've done it a lot. It's becoming more of the same. And my call and my aspiration is just not start another month, another day, repeating what it was. The it's not easy to always take this decision. So the biggest glass ceiling, if I say barrier, was my own self comfort zone. Doing well, the business is doing well, you know the team, you know the workplace, you know your entire ecosystem. Why should you give that up? And that's the biggest glass ceiling I think that I took a decision to break. Certain things helped. Of course, my husband going into entrepreneurial role and seeing him really succeed encouraged me. A lot of my friends and batchmates have done, and that encouraged. So that's why I was telling you, you really don't know whose inspiration, whose connections can actually help you. I think the rest is this whole call of trying to do things differently. Being an entrepreneur, I realized I can decide who I work with, what do I work on, and I don't have to answer back repeatedly. But more than that, I think this whole thing of not trying to do more of the same. It's exciting because what I've learned over the last 30 years, I can spread across organizations, but there's always a time for it. I mean, if I had not accrued enough in my reservoir, I don't think people would take me seriously. In the kind of entrepreneurial stuff that I started, maybe if I started making some products or otherwise, it's different. So I think this was always there. It's just as to when do you break that final glass ceiling, which is your comfort zone. And your other question was, I missed it. What was it? I think I combined two.
Yeah, you combined the two. What inspired you to become an entrepreneur, and what are the glass ceilings you had to break?
I combined the two.
Yeah, you have combined. And another question that has come up is,
before I go to the other question, I think I'll add one bit, and this is what I was talking about, flexibility. So, when I started this journey, it is just the third month. And the reason why I talk about flexibility is you really need to be flexible, even when you start as an entrepreneur, to gauge that the business models can change. So when I started, I thought, oh, I am going to be a consultant or an advisor. And soon as I started interacting with my clients, I realized that people want to see things happen, not advise and go. And exactly that's the niche. So my company, Neocons, the message is we are the unconsulting company. We make things happen. And I alone cannot solve the problem. So the whole business model I have changed, where it's a network of experts and not me alone. So I think that flexibility to constantly gauge, see, change is extremely important. Yeah, you were talking of another question.
Yeah, I think you did speak about it a little bit when we were talking earlier. What are the biases and barriers one must break to emerge as a winner?
What I think, most of the time, and I think Saundarya did it so many times with us, are unconscious biases. It's impossible to at times know what biases we hold. And that is why you need deliberate processes and systems which do not allow any of the biases to, become a trap. And I think in my earlier organization, it was done very well. Even each of the times when a job description was rolled, it was sent through a system. It was an AI managed system which would check for words that can be read differently by certain groups of people. So I think these are all biases. How you position a role, you may make it look so macho that the lady will say, okay, I don't want it because something. So I think there are different kinds of biases, but the biggest thing that works is calling it out. And we are always scared of calling out. We think how that can impact me. But the guy in front may not have even realized that he's actually doing something which is impacting. So I think the biggest, I go back to, again, the same things. Speak up, keep pushing, be flexible. And the biases that you always see is half of it is within you. Should I do it? It's fine. Why it is? This is how it should be. So I think it addresses most of what I wanted to say.
That was a really good one. Any more questions?
There's one more thing that I also wanted to say, just to show that I, as a woman, want and can do a particular role, you don't have to overdo. This whole thing of trying to overprove is going to really, really not help. So you should not also say something which you're not able to deliver. So I think that becomes also very, very important. Performance, speaking up, all of this comes together. Yeah.
Any more questions from the audience? I think that is it then. Paramita, any other tips and I think that more that you would like to add on to what you have already spoken on?
No, I think we will have to all practice and realize that, yes, it exists. It is relevant, but these are barriers that some of it we can address. And very rightly, there are people who've told me that when it is unknown, when you don't know why some decisions have been taken, what do you do? I think it's very easy to again say, I don't want to sound preachy. The only thing that you can do is talk to more than one decision maker, speak up. That's it. It may not change the outcome, but at least people would hear you. Don't just talk to one person, hear his reasoning and settle down with all your things and say, oh, I have to endure it. So it really helps. But do not give up on your aspirations.
Thank you so much, Paramita. That was indeed a wonderful session with a lot of learnings to be carried away. And I'm sure many of you here in the audience will be leaving the session with more confidence and ready to break many glass ceilings. Thank you so much once again, Paramita, for being here with us today and delivering such an impactful session.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Avtar.
Thank you, audience, for joining us here this evening. As we draw close to the day, I'm going to request you to take a couple of minutes and provide your feedback on today's session. Guru, can you please bring up the feedback poll? Guru, can we have the feedback poll, please? I think there is some technical glitch. Just a second, please.
Person you have called is speaking to someone else. You can wait or call again.
Guru, a feedback poll. Yeah, so here we have the feedback poll. A couple of questions for you, and your answers will help us understand your experience in today's session. And sorry for the glitch before we proceed further. How would you rate today's session on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the minimum and 5 being the maximum? And the second question is, how would you rate our facilitator Paramita Sarkar on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the minimum and 5 being the maximum? While you fill in the feedback form, let me iterate that there will be many more sessions that will be rolled out from MyAvtar in the coming months. Stay tuned and look out for our announcements. Please visit www.myavtar.com to explore various opportunities and activities that celebrate diversity. If you have not registered at myavtar.com as yet, do log on to myavtar.com and register now. Browse through to find jobs that might suit your skill sets. read articles of interest, upskill yourself through various webinars conducted exclusively for you. Thank you once again for joining us this evening. Signing off today is Beena Menon. Take care, stay safe, and have a wonderful evening.